Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our tactical breakdown series. Typically the show where we look at the players that have been linked to Arsenal, break them down in an analytical and statistical way with the help of some expert insight. But this is our extra variant of the breakdown show, in which we look at some of the options that Arsenal could go for in certain positions. We've done two of these so far. We first of all did one when Emi Buendia no longer became an attacking midfield target, and so we assessed the alternative attacking midfielders that Arsenal could look to bring in. And in our second show, we looked at the replacement that are possible for Granit Xhaka and who could replace him in the middle of the park. We've seen a few players on that list linked to Arsenal recently, of course, too. And in today's show, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the possible right-back replacements for Hector Bellerin for the upcoming season. In each show, we've tried to do 10 to really kind of get to you guys to really understand how many options there really are, and it's a lot. There are a lot of possible targets. There are some that are on this list that you may be surprised by. There are some that are not on this list that you think, why hasn't he included them? Two reasons. One, he probably forgot about them. Secondly, I just, prefer the ones that we've got right here, right now. So as we do with these shows, and what we did with the last one, is that if you are tuning into the show live, we're going to play a little bit of a game with you guys, of course, and we go through our ratings. So whenever I put up the first player and then the second and so on, whatever, you need to give them a score out of 10. Now, it'd be great if when you did that, you obviously gave some explanation as to why you've given it that specific score out of 10. It would be based on how much you like them as a player, how much you know about them as a player, of course, too, how well equipped you think they are to play Arsenal's right-back position. You'll need to take into account the price and how much they're available for. But based upon all the information that we're going to give you, you need to give them a score out of 10. And then you need to come out and tell us in the chat box what you think is going to be your score for each of these players. So without further ado, let's kick things off with our first player. But please make sure, if you haven't already, drop a like on today's video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. There'll be another show for you guys a little bit later on this evening, not typically around the usual 5 o'clock time because I've got a busy afternoon, but we will be doing a show a little bit later on for the Q&A of the day. I didn't know. Let's move on then to our number one, which is one of our homegrown options and probably the best, in my view, on the list already. Kicking it off with the very much well-known Max Aarons. Norwich City right back. You can see from the heat map how attacking he likes to be on the right-hand side. 21 years of age, right back, 2 goals, 5 assists, 45 appearances in the Championship last season for Norwich. Played in pretty much every single game, if not all. And, of course, came away looking like the league's best right back. Has already got Premier League experience and is rated at around £30 million by Sky Sports. So that's the figure. That's the player. That's who I want to see at Arsenal next season. He is certainly my number one pick and why he is number one on this list. And I'd certainly be giving him probably a 9 to 9.5 out of 10 as a replacement for Hector Bellerin. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. I'm seeing a lot of 8s and 9s in the chat box. People saying, is he strong enough? One of the things that has been talked about with Max Aarons is whilst he's quite small and lightweight, it doesn't necessarily matter too much in consideration of the fact that he is quite tenacious. He loves to get up and down the pitch. His tackling is very good and his consistency is excellent. 9.5s, 8s out of 10 due to his price. Tono says 8 homegrown, good output, sorry. He can overlap and play in an inverted manner as well. Nimish is giving him a 10. Lacks height, says Yo-Yo. Weren't impressed when he was in the Prem. 6. Wow, that is very, very harsh from Yo-Yo there. Nimish says 10, my number one choice. Rahul says 8, easy. Ed says 9, a Tierney on the right, which is basically what we're looking for. We're looking for someone to effectively be as good as Kieran Tierney is on the right-hand side. So if you are watching this on playback, by the way, please make sure you leave a comment with all the names of the players that we get linked with on this list, and you can give them a score out of 10. I do like going back through the comments and reading what you guys have to say. So please make sure that you do. Let's go to our number 2 option. That is Zeki Celic of Lille, 24-year-old Turkish international. He's definitely not a centre midfielder. He's definitely not a centre midfielder and a CDM. You know, when you go back over these things and you're like, have you definitely checked that everything about what you've written here is right? Well, he is, in fact, certainly a right back. He's obviously played very, very well this season for Lille and had a really good kind of last 2 years or so for Lille. He did go to the European Championships and he was not that impressive in a very, very bad Turkish team. And I think maybe that Turkish side of things has certainly affected the viewpoint of a lot of people of Zeki Celic and made people think maybe he's not exactly the right player for Arsenal. I think personally he's still a very good player and has had a very good 2 years in Liga with Lille, and the Euro performance doesn't necessarily give you that same kind of estimation about his actual performances. Matt says 7. PAPP says 7. Edro Sass says 7.2. Thracian says 6.5. Not convincing at all. ML Reaction says 7.5. 6 from Rahil. George, actually 7 because of his price. Alex Jones says 7. Good club form, but nothing special for me. Dane says 7. Good link with Pepe. Have obviously played together at a good point to bring up 2, of course. Jordan's gone for a 3. Vuyo's gone for a 6. Carlito 6 or 7. Yo-Yo's gone for a 7. Best when joining the attack, but can't be trusted to be left isolated. Yo-Yo rating Zeki Celic higher than Max Aarons. That is a very, very interesting way to look at the other 2 there. Nimish 6.5. Yasir says 8. Mint says 6. Not for me. And Jordan says he's trolling. Well, that's your own fault, Jordan, because now we think that you rate him as a 3. So the joke's on you, son. Let's move on to our next one on the list and go to Tariq Lamptey of Brighton. Only played 11 games last season in the Premier League because of the injury problems that he faced, and supposedly would still be going for around £50 million, according to certain reports. 1 goal, 3 assists in those 11 games. Can play as a right back, as a back 4, or as a kind of a right mid / right wing back and a back 5. 20, he's not 26. Why is I've done this 3 times, saved it 3 times, and it's still getting things wrong. In terms of him as a player, though, and we actually look at him as a player, he's got a lot of talent, a lot of potential, and certainly someone that I think Arsenal are going to be pushing to try and do if they can't get anyone else. Because of his price, I think that's really going to push him down the list in regards to where Arsenal rate him and where Arsenal kind of look at him as a certain player. So let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Thracian says 6, more of a winger, not great defensively. He is 20, not 26, and that's why it says it on the screen. Some bloke says 4, way too expensive. Josh says 7. John Daly says 8 rather than him to Aaron's. But I'm worried about his injury record. Vinny says 3, weak, can't defend, nothing but a pace merchant who is injury prone. Very harsh. Rahil says 8 rating, price tag is probably the issue with this one, and I can understand your kind of your reservations about him as a player if he's got a price tag of £50 million attached to him. Afterling says 4, ML Reaction says 5, Arun says 6, Tiger says 9, baller, and he's injury prone, only had 1 long-term injury in his career. Which was a hamstring problem. And that's the issue when it comes to kind of injury-prone players, is that muscular problems are the ones that tend to kind of come back and do haunt you a little bit. Alex Jones says 6, not good enough for me, and the price tag is too high. Josh Hunter says his injury record is a huge issue. Now, some players have injuries at 20 and never ever suffer the same injuries again. So I'm not going to say he's injury prone at this stage in time. I think it's harsh to call him injury prone because we don't know if this injury is going to affect him in the long term. He is and has suffered a big injury, and so for that reason I would say it's a big risk. But for me, Lamptey is certainly a player that I would be looking at for the future, but a huge risk in regards to if Arsenal wanted to pay the money that it would take to get him. Kevin Babu, the Switzerland right back for Wolfsburg. Very interesting player that I know a lot of you have talked about previously in the past, and a lot of you liked what he did at the European Championships this summer for Switzerland, of course. No goals and only 1 assist in the Bundesliga with 22 appearances, 3 from the bench. He was massively injured because of a huge kind of serious injury that affected him at the end of last season that carried on into the current season, or the one that's just been. And he was obviously replaced by Rodel Baku at right back for Wolfsburg. And so pretty much has played the second half of this season solely, but has regained that right back position for himself. Did do quite well at the Euros, but was replaced by Widmer in the Swiss side when his performances weren't particularly consistent, but he had a couple of kind of really bright sparks and bright moments during that tournament. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Michael says 2, a Newcastle flop. And this is something that comes across a lot. We've got it with Abraham. We've had it with players like Mikel Moreno that people have written off just because they didn't make it at a Premier League club when they were younger. I don't buy into this theory. I think it's a flawed logic. when you think about how a player was in the Premier League at a different club 4, 5, whatever years ago, and how they are now, it's completely different. You would say that Kevin De Bruyne is a Chelsea flop. Salah is a Chelsea flop. Like, you talk about this in that context, and it doesn't make too much sense, does it? So you can't really talk about clubs from 5 years ago. Things change. Carlito says 7. Good value, works hard and looks disciplined. Josh says 5. John Daly says 4 because he's friends with Xhaka. Javinho style hair from After Link says that he gets a 0. I mean, are we really judging players on hairstyles now? Nico says 2. Some bloke says 5. Cheap price will do a job, not top quality. Let's move on to our next. And this is a interesting choice that you may not know too much about. Fabien Centonzo, or Centonzo, from Metz in Ligue 1. A really exciting 25-year-old right back that is really knocking on the door of the French national side and is looking to make the kind of the next step up in his career. Estimated by Jeremy Smith, who I spoke to about him, for around £10 million and around that kind of situation. He's 36 appearances last season, 1 goal, 0 assists, which is, I know from the raw kind of statistics, may turn you off him, but it's actually his work rate, his defensive capability is insane. If you look at the heat map, he does so much in his own defensive half. Someone that you should definitely look into, someone that you should definitely be hearing about in the next kind of year or so, and depending on what happens with him this summer. But he's knocking on the door of the French national side, and certainly one that you need to be well aware of for his qualities in both the offensive and defensive thirds of the pitch. Vinny says 2. How can you play right back, right mid and not get a single assist in the French league? Because some players are different styles and some systems work so that the fullbacks are massive creators. Some systems work so they're not so much. And Centonzo is definitely someone that's going to give you a hell of a lot more in the defensive third because of his work rate, because of his tracking back. I wouldn't really read too much into the lack of goals and assists. You also think about the team that he plays for as well. Michael says 9 because I've never heard of it. John Daly says 8, works his socks off. ML Reaction says 7. Abe's put him as a solid 5 because he doesn't know anything about him, which is completely fair enough. Mint says 5, not heard of him, but I like that heat map. Mark Prince says an 8. Thracian says 7, lots of experience for his age. Not the highest quality, though. Yo says 5, don't know him at all, but the price seems worth a risk if he's rated highly. Vinny, you definitely couldn't get an assist. A really rude joke came into my head there, I'm not going to use. Let's move on to our next one and talk about Nordi Mukhiele from RB Leipzig, another French player currently playing his trade in the Bundesliga. Can play as a right back, can play as a right wing back / right midfielder, and can play as a centre back as well. 3 goals, 2 assists last season from 28 appearances, 7 coming off the bench. £25 million rated by 90 million, I think, is very much underselling what he would actually go for. I think RB Leipzig would be looking for a hell of a lot more than £25 million. Really interesting player, really good physical side of things. That's why you can also play as a centre-back. Really good engine going up the pitch. Creation-wise, there are questions about his chance creation side of things, an area of his game that he needs to move on. And his work rate up and down the flanks as well. I mean, if you look at the heat map there, I know that there is an element being affected by the lack of games that he's played. But when you compare it to someone like Centonzo, who really does get up and down that flank and his work rate is on point, then maybe that's something to be a little concerned about. Let's see what you guys are saying on the chat box. Matt Thornton says 10. Jordan says 10. Josh says 8. Wesley says 6, but promising. George says 7. Bit of a monster, but not my first choice. Alex Jones says 6. Not quite the right back I want. Not a natural right back, and he would cost too much money. Jaden says 8. King says 8. Michael says 2 because I don't like him on FIFA. Edrasas, says heat map looks like a moth. Wow, what weird moths have you got going on around your house? Thracian says 9, good quality, young and quick. Rahil says 8 is Tyler Adams, also a right back at RB Leipzig. He's played a lot in midfield, Tyler Adams, and I haven't actually put him on this list because he's played kind of right mid, centre midfielder, and I look at him more of as a centre midfielder, to be honest. I know he can play right back, but I think Adams' best position is in the middle. Vinny, 10, as I want you to get a sponsor from Red Bull due to the bigging up all of their players. It wouldn't be a TGT list without a Red Bull player on it whatsoever, even though, you know, it's not Red Bull, it's Rassenbull Sports is what their name actually is. So, you know, got to get it right. Sponsorship things coming after me. Kieran says 8. Shyam says 10 if we play with a back 3, which is also something interesting. Nimish says, might I suggest Matty Cash instead? Be very expensive from Aston Villa. And you know what they're like with us and our relationship with them right now. Sergino Dest is the next one on our list. Barcelona and American. international player, 20 years of age, can play as a right back, can play as a left back, can play as a right midfielder. 2 goals, 1 assist since moving to Barcelona, 30 appearances, 7 coming off the bench, and an estimated kind of figure of around £30 million. The reason why he makes this list and why he's more realistic than maybe you would consider him to be is because of the Barcelona financial situation, the fact that they desperately need to get players off their list. They've just brought in Emerson as well, which obviously we were previously linked to. And it means that we could, and anyone could, in fact, go in for a player like Dest to remove him from their wage bill and to give them the financial support that Barcelona need. I couldn't not put a Barcelona right back on this list because of the situation that they are in right now. And so therefore, maybe it's a situation that we could take advantage of. Vinny says 12 if we can swap him for Bellerin. You're breaking the rules now, Vinny. Thracian says 8. Too expensive and overhyped, in my opinion. MAL says 8, but we'll never get him. Roger says 8.5. Jordan says very exciting, but I'm not convinced. King says 7.5. Great potential, good forward, but shaky defensively. Alex Jones says 7, but way too expensive. Alex R says Dest is an 8 for me. After Ling says, I remember when Mbappe ended Dest's career. I think Mbappe can end a lot of players' careers, in fairness. Josh Hunter says 7. Rahil says 10. Is Barcelona going to sell him this summer? I don't know, honestly, is we don't know what Barcelona are going to do with him. They might sell him with Emerson coming in, with them needing to make money, but we'll have to wait and see. Wesley said 8, but I would still go for Emerson. Be very interesting if we did that. George Davis says 9, be amazing, so versatile, good, 2-footed, rapid, exciting, all for it. Spinazzola is not really a right back, even though he is right-footed, fan. Obviously playing more of his time at left back, even though he is right-footed, and he's very, very injured. So I wouldn't be going for him right now. And Mandeep says 9, very, very good. Some bloke says 8. Feel like we can take advantage of the Classico teams tanking financially, maybe with a loan with an option to buy. Let's move on to Rydal Baku. I know a very popular player amongst plenty of you guys. Very, very interesting talent, and someone that I know has gone on the radar of a lot of people since his performances for Wolfsburg and the German youth national team too. 23 years of age, right back / right wing, can play in a more advanced position. 6 goals, 8 assists in the Bundesliga, very impressive, 34 appearances, and rated supposedly around £20 million. I think that he would go for more than that. I think you'd have to pay close to £30 million to get him. But he is a very, very exciting young player that I know our good friend Drew is a big, big fan of, and certainly someone maybe that the club might look to go for in the future. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Clive Palmer says 6. Weak. Deary me, Clive. Not impressed by him whatsoever. Sultan says 8. Kieran Hodge says 6. Sultan says 8. Matt Thornton says 8. Dane says 10. Thracian says 9.5. Mark Prince says 7. Yasir says 10. George Davies says 10. I have a feeling that maybe Clive was talking about the other one. Oh, he was, Clive. Sorry. Baku is an 8. So he's 6 for what was it? Dest, previous one. Sorry, Clive. I misread you there. Neil Deso says Baku is a very good investment. Trent says 8. Wesley, 8.5, which will be his grade every time he plays for Arsenal. Tiger M, 8.5, so versatile. He's a bit like Ainsley Maitland-Niles said he sees himself as a centre midfielder. I mean, he has played centre midfielder when he was previously at Mainz. It has a position that he can play. So there you go. Ruhanya says 0. That's bad. 0, really? Deary me. Olu says 6. Let's go for no need for this list. Just bring on Denzel Dumfries. Not on my list. Not impressed by Denzel Dumfries. We move on to our penultimate option on the list, and Pedro Porro from Manchester City, who spent time on loan, of course, at Sporting last season. I suppose we probably should change it from Sporting because he is a Manchester City player, of course, and was on loan at Sporting. I first became aware of Pedro Porro when he was at Girona playing in La Liga, and really was a really interesting and exciting player in La Liga. Wasn't really able to stamp his mark whilst there. He was exciting, but he wasn't really established by that point. But when he's gone on loan last season to Sporting, he's had an absolutely fantastic year. 3 goals, 2 assists, can play at right back or as a right wing back as well. 30 appearances, and supposedly, according to Transfermarkt, around £18 million in regards to his kind of value. I think he would maybe cost a little bit more than that, especially from Premier League to Premier League club kind of transfer. Really exciting young player, lots of potential there. Is he someone that could possibly is he homegrown? That's a really good question, actually. Let me just double check. There is a way that we can find out if he would count as homegrown, because if he's been with Manchester City between the ages of 18 and 21, that would mean he counts. Now, he joined Manchester City in 2019, which means that no, unfortunately not. He is not a homegrown player. He was still under kind of the whole Manchester City kind of ownership, because Girona are part of the City football group. So whilst he wasn't technically on loan from Man City at Girona, he was kind of still owned effectively by the City football group. And then he spent time on loan at Valladolid in 2019-20, and then he went in 2020 to Sporting Lisbon on loan for the whole of last season as well. So a really interesting player, someone I think that would really kind of spice things up for our right back position, and someone that maybe you could bring in from Manchester City for a reasonable figure. We'll have to wait and see where he ends up moving this summer. Last one, I believe, on this list is Junior Zambia from Montpellier, another one that some of you may not be too much aware of. I was roughly aware of him before doing the research into today's video. I did speak to Chris Carpenter, who is obviously the go-to, and Jeremy Smith as well, about Zambia. Don't really like him. Didn't really have too many bad words to say at all about Zambia. Very versatile player. Can play at right back, can play at right mid, can play also in midfield. Kind of that Radu Baku, Maitland-Niles kind of vibe, positionally versatile reasons behind that. 1 goal, 6 assists for Montpellier last season. 36 games, 10 coming off the bench. And Chris said he reckons that it'd be a figure of around 15 to 20 million pounds if you were to go for someone like Zambia. So there you go. It's an interesting player, one that's certainly kind of the left field kind of picks, but really an interesting one for the list. I know some people are asking for ones that you think I should have included. Denzel Dumfries, I saw people talking about, not interested in him. A very, very overrated player, in my opinion. Joachim, Joachim Mahler's not a bad shout, Thracian King. Certainly someone that I could have included on this list. There are so many more that we could have included, like Tyler Adams as well. The whole point of these lists are not to necessarily say that these are the best 10 options. They are just giving you some insight and information into 10 possible options that Arsenal could go for. And so because of the fact that obviously you are very well aware of the fact that there are lots of players that we could go for, I want you to let me know in the comment section below. Please do. If you think we've missed someone key off this list that you would very much like to see Arsenal go for next season, then make sure you do. If you could also let me know who your number 1 pick is for Arsenal to bring in for the right back position in the comment section as well, that'd be great, as well as dropping a like on today's video and subscribing to the channel if you are new around here. We are closing in on 25,000 subscribers. If you please could hit that subscribe button. If you are new, I would really appreciate it. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I will see you guys a little bit later on this evening for the Q&A show. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.